I am here to teach you guys how to do the greatest common factor, how to find it. Some people are still having issues with this, so I decided to make my own video to help you guys find the greatest common factor. So like with one example, you have plenty of examples, but if you're still wondering how to do it, you can keep watching for me to do example number 2 and example number 3. So let's first talk about what the greatest common factor is. Greatest means the largest. Common is something that they both have to share. And factors are the numbers that multiply to another number. So I'll give you an example on how to use this. Okay. Example number 1 should look familiar because you can see that example on assignment number 1, question number 6, where you're given 8 to the second power b minus 6 a b to the second power. So the first thing that you need to do for each of these problems is to find the factors of each number. So factors, again, are the numbers that multiply to a different number. So for example here, 1 multiplies to 8. 1 is always going to be a factor of each number because 1 times the number itself will spit out that number back. So 1 times 8 will give me that 8. Same with 6. 1 times 6 would also give me 6. Every single number can be divided by 1 to give that number back. All right, what are the other two numbers that multiply to 8? 2 times 4 also multiplies to 8. So that means that that's another set of factors. Notice that you cannot divide 8 by 3 to get a different number. You cannot divide it by 6 or divide it by 7. So this is as far as my list goes with 8. There's nothing that you can multiply 3 by to get 8. Nothing you can multiply 5 by to get 8. So this is as far as my list goes. Same with 6. 1 times 6 and 2 times 3 gives me that 6. 4 times anything does not give me 6. 5 times anything does not give me 6. So this is as far as my list can go. Alright, out of those, I need to find the greatest thing that they both share in common. So you see the both list, they both are always going to have a 1 in common. But there is something bigger that I can divide them both by, a 2. So that means that because they both share a 2 in common, and it is the largest one that they both share, because notice they both do not have a 3, they both don't have a 4, they both don't have a 6 or an 8. So the biggest thing that they both share in common is a 2. So that is my greatest common factor. All right. So the biggest number that they both share is a 2. So the rule when it comes to whole numbers is, what is the biggest number I can divide both of those by? So the biggest number I can divide both 8 and 6 by is a 2. So that is my greatest common factor when it comes to the numbers. Now, when we're dealing with letters are a little less, it's a little more complicated than just finding the biggest one. So when it comes to letters, you have to make sure that they both have it in common. So like they both have an A in common. And this happens to be the case for this one. They both have an A in common. We have an A to the second power and an A. So if this one doesn't have an exponent, you can assume that it has a power of 1 that we do not see. So out of those two, you need to ask yourself, what is the biggest one that I can take away from both? So this is when letters get a little bit different. Not more complicated, it's just a little bit different. So let's say I ask you, can I take away 1A from both of them? Do they both have enough for me to take 1A? Yes, right? This one has 2, so it's okay if I take 1 away. I'll be left with 1. This one has 1, I can take 1 away and I just wouldn't have any A's anymore. So 1 is okay. But can I take away 2 A's from both of them? For this one, sure, you have 2, I can take away 2. That's completely fine. But this one only has 1. So can I take away 2 A's from just 1? No, because they will not have enough. So when it comes to letters, you're always going to pick the one with the smallest exponent. you're going to look at both exponents. If they both have an a, you're going to look at both of those little numbers and find the smallest one. That is as many as you can take away from both of them without going over, without them not having enough. So if they both have a letter, which one has the smallest exponent is the rule for letters. All right, so let's do the same thing for b. We got b by itself, so we assume that it has power of 1 and b to the second power. So out of those two, which one has the smallest little number? The smallest exponent? It is b to the first power. So they both share a b, and the smallest exponent is a 1. So that's how you do these examples and these problems on this assignment. So if you watched all the way here, you're good to go. You can go do the rest of the assignment on your own. Otherwise, let me give you guys 2 more examples so that you're able to understand it a little bit better. So on example number 2, we got 56, c to the third power, d to the second power, plus 14, c to the third power, e to the second power. So notice the difference there. This time, they both don't have the same letters. So let's say you're not very good at factoring. Let's say you're not good at finding what multiplies to that number. So what you can always do right now that we're at home and have access to the internet is you can literally Google the question, what are the factors of 56? If you do that, this is like the first search. Tells me right here that 56 is a composite number, and the numbers that multiply to 56 are 1 and 56, 2 times 28, 4 times 14, and 7 times 8. So you do not have to come up with that list on your own. All right, so let me write those down again. For 56, we got 1 times 56, 2 times 28, 4 times 14, and 7 times 8. All right, the factors of 14 are 1 times 14 and 2 times 7. There is nothing else that I can multiply to give me 14 back. So out of those two, notice that they both have a 1 in common on both lists. I also have a 2 in common in both lists and a 7 in common. And lastly, I also have a 14 in both lists. So that means that the largest number that they both have in common, the greatest common factor, is that 14. Because it is the biggest number that is in both lists. So here we're going to write that 14 is the largest number that I can divide both of those by. All right, so for our letters, do they both have a letter C? They sure do. They both have a c to the third power. So out of those c to the third power, which one has the smallest exponent? I mean, they both have a 3. So I am able to take away 3 from both with no issues or no problems. All right, do they both have a d in common? No, only one of them does. So that means that you cannot put d down. What about e? Did they both have an e in common? No. So that means that you can also not put an e down. So my answer is 4c to the third. All right, so hopefully you're getting the hang of it now. So now let's do 16a to the 6th power plus 9b. I notice again that they don't have the same letters in common. Okay, so the factors of 16 are 1 times 16, 2 times 8, and 4 times 4. So those are all the numbers that multiply to 16. What about for 9? We got 1 times 9 and 3 times 3. Those are all the factors of 9. Out of those, what is the biggest number that they both share in common that is in both lists? So the biggest one, notice that they don't all have 16s or 9s or 8s or 3s or 4s or 2s. The biggest thing that they both share in common is a 1. And that's okay. That means that they still have a greatest common factor. It just happens to be 1 this time. All right, now let's talk about the letters. They have an A to the 6th and a B. So again, this time, they don't both share the same letter in common. So I cannot put an A down because this one will not have enough for me to put an A. I cannot put a b down because this one won't have enough b's for me to take away. So my greatest common factor there is 1. Alright, let me know if you still want some more videos, some more examples. Not watch the video that I already linked in the assignment. Alright, and let me know if you have any issues.